This is Close Encounters. Close Encounters. True stories, real people. Close Encounters on Cross Rhythms.
Yes, hello and welcome to Close Encounters with me, Anne Donaldson. My guest today is Elly Datson. Elly, welcome to Close Encounters.
Thank you. Very happy to be here.
It's good to have you with us today. And you're a single mum and you work 2 days a week at a local nursery.
Yeah.
But you weren't born, were you, in the UK?
No, I was born in Belgium. Yes, and then from there we moved to West Africa because my parents were missionaries. So they worked with a company called Wycliffe who do Bible translation. So they felt called overseas to West Africa. I think they were studying French at the time in Belgium. That's why I was born there. I was there for about a year. And then we moved to Ivory Coast for several years. And then from there, we were evacuated because there was a civil war.
Okay.
We moved to Mali for, I think, 6-ish years. Don't quote me on the years, but... and then from there, they felt called to Senegal, where they worked as dorm parents at the boarding school that I went to.
Right.
There. Yes, so I was over there until about age 15 when we came back to UK. But it was, it was a good childhood. I remember it well.
Good.
I went to all sorts of different schools over there. So I went to French schools, some American schools, international schools, some Christian, some not. We moved a lot, even within countries. I don't think I was ever at a school for longer than 2 years. But I don't look back on that with regret. I really enjoyed. Change became exciting. Even now, I can see that impact. Change for me is something I look forward to. I feel excited by. It was, it was in Senegal actually that. So they were Christians, obviously, and I was brought up in that faith. With that example, I remember, Christmas times, we'd often have people over, and Jesus was very much central to our Christmases, and just all about life, really. It was very much part of the lifestyle, part of who they were, and what they wanted to be part of who I was. I remember it being in Senegal, really, that that was a Christian school. That was a Christian boarding school. So we lived together. We lived with other Christians. So all the other kids there would have had missionary parents.
Yes.
They would have been overseas and it was all sorts of different nationalities. You had Americans there, people from New Zealand, people from Australia, people from Zambia, people from Korea. I think I remember my dorm room was myself, who's English by, I don't know, nationality. Ima, who was Nigerian, Yewon, who was Korean, and Micah, who was Dutch. So you had a real mix of culture, and it was, I think that's the closest I've felt in a kind of Christian community, of when all that falls away and what you're left with is the connection you have in Christ.
Yes.
I can remember that well, and I think that's why that's where I would say I came to Christ by my own choice and not just from upbringing.
Yeah.
But I particularly remember we had church every Sunday, and there was one Sunday we were worshipping, and there was a girl called Rebecca Waynes, who I remember seeing her, and she had her hands lifted up, and I just thought, she looked so full of joy, so full of abandon, and I was like, whatever that is that she has, I want that. And I knew from my upbringing, I knew that that's what Jesus does. That's what Jesus brings. So we had lots of time of prayer, and I really felt I wanted to be baptized because I thought, well, this is real to me.
Yes.
I want to make that public. So I was baptized. I was about 14 in the Senegalese Sea.
Oh,
on the beach that was 10 minutes away from our boarding school. I loved that boarding school.
It sounds idyllic.
Yes, yeah. So I stand by that baptism because it was. It was he was real to me. It was a real relationship.
Yeah. So the influences you had around you were very positive.
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
And very formative. And I'm sure we'll hear as your story unfolds how God has taken hold of those strands from your early childhood and is enabling you to do what you're doing today.
Yes,
so that's exciting. So that's wonderful. It'd be a good opportunity for you to introduce your first song choice. You've chosen Idols.
So the songs that I've chosen, most of them are ones that I have been listening to recently, so over the last couple of years. So they're not necessarily ones from my childhood. I think my memory just is not that great. But this one just speaks to surrender and the idea of giving God everything, and that's been a real theme over the last couple of years for me.
Okay, thank you. You're listening to Close Encounters. I'm Anne Donaldson, and my guest today is Elly Datson. Elly, you were saying you spent the first 15 years of your life not in the UK, but then you returned to the UK with your parents.
Yes, So, I had my 15th birthday just as we came back to England. I think I remember that. It was... like I said, I was always super excited by change. So for me, the idea of coming back to England, yes, I would miss friends, but at the same time, I was looking forward to it. And funny enough, I was looking forward to sharing God with people. I think because I'd been recently baptized, and I was so excited just to share that love for Jesus that I had, that relationship. I was like, I'm gonna tell everyone I meet about him. I was gonna start Bible studies. So I went to a school that was a secular school. So it was in Tame we moved to first. And the culture shock was unanticipated, I think. I kind of knew things were going to be different. But like I said, I was excited. But I think the culture clash, as it were, not just between countries, but between having lived in such a tight-knit Christian community to moving to one that was not in any way. So we had a local church that we went to. It was my parents' home church, who supported them overseas. But I didn't really have any personal connection to it. And I remember there being a youth group that I would sometimes attend. But for the large part, I think I'm talking about this because the peer group that I ended up getting involved with at school, and I think that would have been any peer group really, because from memory, there were no other Christian kids there. Yeah. There was no one else who God meant anything to. If anything, God was a silly idea. Yeah. I remember in science class, I'd get made fun of because I believed something else about creation. Yeah. And I guess so my faith was quite naive and I was very outspoken about it. So it was just a completely different culture and sense of faith and values and what mattered. And I talk about my faith being quite naive because I think it's been in hindsight that I've kind of looked back. So I started really struggling in the first year and a half of being back with this sense that God had left me. Okay. So I remember spending, I feel like it was 6 months or so, every single night crying out to God, going, I don't feel you anymore. Where are you? And I had a journal. I'd write loads and loads. I spend ages writing, and I think most of what I wrote was like, I don't get it. What's going on? Yeah. And I think it's because, in hindsight, again, like looking back, I can kind of see that my faith was based on the feeling of God. I was relying on Him as a a fuzzy sense, yes, as it were. Which as I'm still in process and journey, but I've since learned that He's so much more than that. And I didn't get that fuzzy feeling back. I think largely I was basing my feelings on circumstances and things that are happening around me.
Yes.
So I ended up making the very conscious choice to say, well, God, if you don't want me, I don't want anything to do with you.
Wow.
Because I don't want someone who doesn't want me, who doesn't care about me. I don't know, make of that what you will, teenage years and angst and culture clash and all that going on. But generally just a real sense of like, God does not want me.
Yeah.
I therefore don't want him. And I didn't stop believing in God. I very much believed he was still there. I think that was part of what made it hurt so much, was that I still believed in the reality of God.
Yeah.
I just didn't believe he was who he said he was anymore.
Okay.
So I, from that point, kind of let the world take me on its wings, as it were. And I ended up getting quite depressed clinically and started self-harming. That was a real way of just, I didn't know how else to deal with all these emotions,
yes,
all the pain. I then kind of not transitioned from that, but let an eating disorder come into my life and kind of take over. So it went from self-harming, didn't completely go, but it was largely taken over by an eating disorder. And again, I think it was, I'm no psychoanalyst. I went to quite a bit of therapy. We never quite got to the bottom of it. But I think just kind of reflecting now, how much of it was just desperately trying to cling on to have a sense of identity and worth and figure out who I was, my place, without God. And it, unfortunately, I let everything else around me form who I was becoming. And I kind of went in and out of a spiritual, like I said, I never stopped believing in God. So I'd have moments where I'd reach a real low. I remember I was in an eating disorder clinic for a while, and I actually reached out to God a lot, and I recently found lots of like thank you letters to God about how I was feeling, like thank you for your protection, thank you that you've carried me through another meal, because meal times were super, super hard. It was like, trying to jump off a cliff for someone who's afraid of heights, when I can kind of explain what it's like putting a meal in front of someone with an eating disorder. But even then, I think it was only ever surface level, to an extent that I wanted God for the release of my problems. Not because I understood what life with God actually looked like, what true surrender really looked like in terms of letting God take over and lift me on his wings rather than being carried along by the world's. And so I came out of the clinic, and the eating disorder wasn't gone, but I was weight restored, so they were able to let me go. And I started uni not long after that, and I'd had, I want to say, a little bit of a problem with alcohol beforehand, kind of as soon as I turned 18, started partying and that sort of thing, but that wasn't full blown until I went to uni. And it just, I think, I balanced out my eating disorder, which became binge eating and throwing up, with the abuse of alcohol, because it was a way to numb the pain that the eating disorder was causing me. And then COVID hit whilst I was in my third year of uni. And I remember I had to spend, I think it was like 6 months or so at home, because we all had to move back. And I was getting through, I want to say, like a bottle of vodka a day. Purely on this kind of trying to bury whatever was going on. And the wild thing is, I was still telling everyone I was a Christian.
Really?
Yeah. Like my friends at uni knew me as the Jesus girl.
Wow.
And it's so, it's crazy that I was living such a double standard of, again, this kind of surface level. I wanted to be what Jesus wanted me to be, but never actually knowing what that looked like. And so never being able to let go of these vices, as it were, never quite being able to understand what the life that he was calling me into, or even kind of really scratching the surface of that. And then from uni, I went straight into hospitality. So I went straight into full-time work, and I worked as a bartender, which again, alcohol's all around you, and it's normalized. So no one, I didn't identify I had a problem. I think deep down, you know that this is not healthy. And I think a lot of people who do binge drink, even if it's just on a weekend, I think deep down they recognize that there's something that's not good about this.
Yes.
But it's so normalized by culture that it's never seen as an addiction until you're, I don't know, having it in your coffee.
Yeah.
But yeah, so hospitality work, and that's where I met my first boyfriend. So I was 24 at the time, and he worked as a chef, and he was unfortunately into drugs as well as drinking, and so I ended up, because that I just wanted to. He became my idol in a sense. I think I was someone who was. God has given me a personality of all or nothing, which is great when it's used for God, but is a real is not great when it's not.
No.
So I was all for him, which meant doing everything he did, and besides, and which also meant having sex outside of marriage. Which again at the time it was like, I even, like I said, I still would have said I was following Jesus, or at least wanting to, believing that God was real. I would have said, if someone had asked me if I'm a Christian, I would have said yes. But again, believing that God kind of wanted my happiness above all else, and that whatever made me happy would make him happy. And that unfortunately led to a rather dramatic breakup, which was... so he ended up cheating on me, and that really broke my trust, which was, already broken really in God. I think I blamed him, and the boyfriend, obviously, but I blamed God for not being in control of that, for not protecting me from that, as if it somehow was the problem. So I again sort of made another active choice to kind of go, like, I'm really done with you now. I'm not even going to pretend to try. And I went wildly off the rails, if you can go even more off the rails. And kind of, and it was around that time that I met the father of my son, who is turning 2 next week, who is my little blessing. So I met my next boyfriend a few months after that, and unfortunately that turned into a very abusive relationship. And I think, funny enough, I would have said that I was the most empowered at that time that I'd ever felt. So I was under the illusion that, like, because I could do what I want with my body, I could, take all the drugs I wanted, I could drink as much as I wanted, I could sleep with whoever I wanted, that I was in control. I was the most empowered I'd ever felt. But then I got together with Marcus's dad, and he was able to manipulate and abuse me emotionally, physically, financially, and I let that happen because I really wasn't that empowered. It was a false empowerment. I let one person take everything I was and just break it down bit by bit by bit by bit. I was taken away from my family, cut ties with them, moved away from the area where we were living. Very much hand to mouth, because like finances, it was never in control. It was never and it was around that time that what a lot of people would have called my biggest mistake was I got pregnant, and I remember telling my parents and being like, oh, aren't you so happy for me? Because I'm in this delusion of like, this is wonderful, this is my little family, this is going to fix everything. And they're like, oh, yeah, great. Obviously, like, they were ready to support me, ready to, do what parents do. And they're very loving. Like, I can't thank them enough for the part they played and everything. But
yes. What a story. My goodness. I think it'd be a good time to have a break.
Going on.
No, not at all. What a story. And for your next song, you've chosen World Changed.
Yes. That lands well. So this song, again, is just really reflects how God has taken all of that I've just talked about and has radically transformed me into
Fantastic.
His new creation.
Thank you. Yes, this is Close Encounters with me, Anne Donaldson, and my guest today is Elly Datson. And Elly, wow, what a story. You shared with us up to the point where you discovered you were pregnant with your little boy Marcus.
Yes,
Tell us how that unfolded.
Yes, so it was planned, and I could never have anticipated how God was going to use that. Because like I said, it was a moment where I think anyone looking from the outside would have said, this is a huge mistake. This is not going to end well. This is going to be terrible. And I just love how the Lord works in that he takes something that we think is going to, blow up on our face, and he just crafts something so beautiful. Because that's what he did. He took what he knew was the only way I was ever going to look outside myself. So when I became pregnant, as the weeks passed by, I started to realise, God started to show me that the things I was doing, the way I was living, the relationship I was in, the impact on me was not just on me anymore. Yeah. It was on someone else, and that I was bringing a life into this world that was going to have to live with not just who I was, but who I had around me. It was around that time that, my mum had already invited us, me originally, to come and live back home. They'd said, please come move back home, but you can't bring, my partner at the time wasn't allowed, because they were like, we don't want him living with us. That then changed after I became pregnant. I think they prayed about it and they said, look, both of you, we'd rather have you and him home rather than have you here somewhere that is not great and we don't know, what's going on. We want to support you. We want to be able to help you raise this baby. And I was desperate enough. I think, like I say, God was revealing to me just how dire my situation was, because up until that point, when anyone who's been in an abusive relationship, I think you kind of know deep down this is not okay. Mm. But you make excuses, you dismiss things, you shift the blame to yourself. Yes. You think that you believe that if you love them more, if you love them better, if you love them differently, that something will change, or that it will be how it was always meant to be. Mm. And God was showing me that was just not the case. Yeah. So I accepted my parents' invitation, and my partner at the time happened, God incidents, as they say, happened to lose his job around the same time. So he was also desperate enough to say yes, because initially he had said no way. Mm-hmm. So we moved back home when I was about 4 months pregnant, into my parents' house. And I was very adamant that I wanted to go back to church, because I was definitely, like I said, I'd just hit a rock bottom where and it wasn't just about me anymore. Yeah. I think with all the other self-destructive behaviours, I didn't care enough because it was just me, and I didn't feel my own sense of worth was that worth it. I cared more about fulfilling the desire than actually preserving life or living to my potential. Yeah. Whereas now I had a baby, and I had to think about their life, their potential. And so I started going back to the church that my parents went to at the time, which is the Beacon in Stafford. And just the way that the church family came around me, there was zero judgment. I was having a child out of wedlock. I had not been going to that church. I think they'd known me as a prayer point for most of the time. But yeah, there was just a real welcoming of people who knew God and were an example of Jesus to me, of Jesus' love. And the more that I let their influence and God's influence into my life, the less enamoured I became with my partner at the time, the more that his tactics, his manipulation, his abuse became apparent and unacceptable to me.
Yeah.
I had never before felt able to stand up and say this is not okay, or to just be able to face that conflict.
Yes.
Now that I had people around me who were supporting, and I was able to be honest about what was going on, they were able to speak truth into that.
Yeah.
You know, it was starting to break down this web of lies that I'd believed for so long. And of course, all this time, my pregnancy is growing, and I'm more and more aware of this baby and my responsibility towards him, and just the gift of life that life is, not just to this baby but to me. You know, I'm God's child. And so it was Marcus was born, and around 5 weeks after this, that myself and my partner at the time had a altercation, and the police had to be called, and he was removed and put on bail for 3 months. And that devastating to me. You know, I was like, oh, this is the end of my world, because I still loved him, even though I was aware of the abuse. I still had that bond, and God made that 3 months become 6 months, so even longer. And then that 6 months became a year of bail, of separation, because God knew I needed that.
Yeah.
He knew that it's only with this separation from this person, from this idol that you've created, that you're going to be able to move towards me. I had a real vivid image from God during that time of, it was myself, so it's quite graphic, myself moving towards God. But as I'm moving towards God, like bits of my flesh are being pulled away, like from my body, that are attached to my partner. And the more that I hold on to my partner, the more I try to move towards God, the more it's going to be torn off, to the point there's going to be nothing left to move towards God. And I couldn't deny that any longer. And so I about last year, I think it was, made the decision to cut contact completely, even after the bail, and have not been in contact since. And it's been wonderful. Hard, but really wonderful in terms of moving towards God more fully as a whole, as a person who God is making whole, who God has made whole and is still working in me. But yeah, it was a difficult transformation, but a life-giving one.
Wow, yeah. Oh my goodness, what a story. So your next song that you've chosen is Where Would I Be?
Yes, and that's a real reflection of kind of the question, you know, had I moved along with where I was going, the thought of where I'd be doesn't bear thinking about, really, you know. And where God is taking me and has taken me is wildly opposite to that, and it's just beautiful.
Welcome back to Close Encounters with me, Anne Donaldson. My guest today is Elly Datson. Elly, you know, you've touched on some amazing topics today, very relevant topics. First of all, we acknowledge the transformation that has come in your life as you've recommitted yourself to Jesus. That's powerful. Some of the things you were sharing, other people are facing similar crises. What would you say, you know, to anyone listening who is perhaps not sure of their own identity, their own worth?
Yeah, gosh, it's so difficult. I think everyone will struggle in different ways with what that question even means to them. You know, I feel like I went through a plethora of different ways of trying to discover my identity or trying to cope with what the world was telling me. I think it's really, what I have come to learn is how important it is to be aware of what story you're believing.
Right.
I think I have been learning about how we interpret things that we believe through the stories that we're told, and the stories that we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
And if that is coming from somewhere that's telling you you're not enough, or that your worth is circumstantially based, or is based on your looks or your abilities, and that no matter how much you press into that, it's never enough. There's always more. There's always someone who's better. There's always someone who's thinner. There's always someone who's stronger. There's always someone who's cleverer. And it might not, I think it might not necessarily, you might think, oh yeah, I know that. I'm not a sucker for that. I'm aware.
Yeah.
But it's really subtle.
Yes.
And please don't think you're stupid if these things are things you believe about yourself. Like that is lie after lie after lie after deceit after half truth after a 99% truth and a 1% lie.
Yeah.
That we live in a world of that kind of thing.
Yes.
And the truth and the only truth is that which Jesus says about you.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been over the last couple of years. That's what I've been pressing into, is who God says I am. The person that I've always been, but who I'm now leaning into as to more holy, who God is designed me to be. I think, that identity in Christ was always there.
Yes.
You are enough. God has made you enough. God has made you in his image. And I don't say that as a throwaway, catchy Christian cliche. I mean that in the whole sense, is you are body, heart, soul and mind made in the image of God. Everything about you, sometimes I think we can talk a bit disparagingly about our bodies, but that was created too. And it's something that can be honoured and glorified in how God has made it, and it's something that can be used for God's plan. It has a purpose as well.
Yes.
You have a purpose, and it's not about knowing exactly what that is. I was talking recently to my pastor actually about how one can know the direction but not the destination. I don't necessarily know exactly where God is taking me in terms of what it's going to end up and look like, but now I know what direction to go in. I know to go in the direction of Jesus, and as long as that's my purpose.
Excellent.
And I think we can get a bit caught up in when people say, what's your purpose, what's the purpose of life, in terms of like, I need to have a solid answer for it. Like, I'm going to be working this job, I'm going to have this many kids, I'm going to save this species of the wildlife. I don't know, like it's very specific. And I think purpose is not necessarily, it can be, but I don't think it has to be that. I think it can just be a direction. And you need to be intentional about what direction and what truth that you're picking, because we're offered a lot. And they're not all true.
I think you've hit on something very powerful in when you say what voice you're listening to. It is so subtle. Those lies, those deceits are woven into every aspect of life. And if we take them on board, it leads to what you've experienced. So
and it may not be an active thought. I'm reflecting on like when I was with the partner who was abusive, and thinking that I myself I thought I was confident. I didn't have any insecurities. That's what I would have told you, and I strongly believed that. But what my experience will tell you, what that relationship looked like, is actually that's not what was really my belief. So I think there's some digging to do, perhaps if your surroundings, if your experiences are not telling you, are not what a confident person would be going through, or something, or maybe there's something that needs to be dug in terms of what are you believing, what truth are you truly living out of? Yeah.
And because as followers of Jesus, we live out of the truth that he is the truth.
Yes.
And his promises and who he says we are is truth. That's fantastic. Thank you, Elly. We're going to listen to your next song choice, which is Whatever It Takes.
Yeah. I think recognising just that God did whatever it took to get me back. Now I want to do whatever it takes to follow him.
You're listening to Close Encounters with me, Anne Donaldson, and my guest today is Elly Datson. So, oh my word, Elly, this is just amazing story of restoration. Now, when I introduced you, I said you were working a couple of days in the local nursery.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, you are being mentored and discipled by your pastor at your home church.
Yes.
And you're doing an internship with your local church.
Yes, that's right.
What's that look like? Tell us a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm incredibly thankful and blessed that my pastor, Chrissy Remsburg, I'm going to name drop. Thank you, Chrissy. She saw something in me and she chose to mentor and disciple me and offered me a role as an intern just to explore different spaces of the church and find out where I would thrive, where I would struggle, and just give me the opportunity to explore a calling that God had upon me. And she's given me the opportunity, risky as it was, to preach. I remember I preached for the first time, I think it was last year or the year before. And it was the first time I'd even like properly opened the Bible and studied it for myself. And it was just a moment of like, wow, like this feels so normal to me. This feels so, well, like I think we were chatting about just earlier in terms of when I came to the UK, I wanted to share Jesus with people, but I didn't know how to go about it, and I wasn't ready, I wasn't equipped.
Yeah.
Whereas now, I feel like God has been equipping me all along.
Yes.
That everything I've been through, all that I've learned in different aspects and ways that I could never imagine. I think back, I studied touring theatre at uni, and with the hopes of being an actor one day. But actually what God has utilised the skills that I've learned there for is I can public speak. I can get up on a stage and I can give a sermon and not be overcome by fear. Like largely the Holy Spirit, of course, but like he was training me, giving me the skill set to even know how to write in a certain way. It's just incredible how God has restored those years.
I love how he takes those what others looking in on could say was a mistake in a way that only God can do it, and he weaves it into something that actually is glorious and life-giving, so that's absolutely wonderful. So at this point you're exploring what that looks like and the shape it's taken, but even what you're doing today, having this lovely conversation with me that we're believing lots of people are going to be listening in on, this is all part of you. I think you said you know what direction, but you don't know the destination. Yeah. And this is all part of even what you're doing today is all part of what God is doing and how he's using you.
And I'm so thankful and so honoured that that God can do that with me, to play that part, to have that purpose. It's life restoring. I think sometimes the temptation to look back and go, oh, what if I'd have gone to Bible school earlier? What if I'd have returned to faith earlier? Whereas actually, like, there's just ways that God has worked in all of it to make me into the person I am today.
Yes.
That I can connect with people on a whole different level.
Absolutely.
God is good.
Your story is so relevant to what a lot of people are facing today, and you can be sharing it from the overcoming. You can be sharing it from the side where you've come through those difficulties. And now, use it to the glory of God. So
I think that's it. Is I shared recently at my church that I wanted to explore ministry, a life of calling into ministry, of serving in every aspect of my life to God, because I can think of no better way of saying thank you. I cannot express in words enough how grateful and thankful I am to him for what he's done, for the I call it Elly 1.0 and Elly 2.0 because they're two different people. They are.
Oh, Elly, it's been absolute privilege having you here today and hearing some of your story, which I know is just going to continue to be glorious. Thank you so much. And would you like to introduce your final song choice, which is The Difference by Sanctus Real?
Well, doesn't that fit nicely? Yeah, it's Elly 1.0 and Elly 2.0. Two wildly different people, and the reason is Jesus.
Yeah, thank you.
Close Encounters on Cross Rhythms. True stories, real people.